Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss any update from Rouse IAS Study Circle. Join the only official Telegram channel of Rouse IAS Study Circle to get the relevant materials and important updates. Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of the newspaper analysis from the Civil Services Examinations perspective. So today we are going to discuss the Hindu Delhi edition dated 10th February 2022. The topics to be discussed have been displayed on your screen and the timestamping of the same has been provided in the description box below. So here is an important announcement for all of you. We all know that testing is an important part of UPSC preparations, and to ensure that all your preparations are on right track, Rouse IAS will conduct a Pre-Parikshan 2022, which is an all India free mock test from 11th February till 13th February. The test will give you the all India rankings, question level analysis, comparative analysis, and live online test discussion which is scheduled on 14th February at 3:30 pm. So what are you waiting for? Register yourself at eLearn platform of Rouse IAS to take the test. And all the best. Now here is the question for weekly answer writing practice. The question asks you to critically examine the functioning and implementation of Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Rurban Mission in India. Also suggest measures to ensure improvement in the outcome for the mission. You have to answer this question in 250 words, and once you answer this question, you have to submit it on the eLearn platform to get it evaluated by our expert evaluators. Moreover, you are also requested to go to the DNS dated 5th December 2021 in order to understand the intricacies of the Rurban mission, its focus, its objectives, and the analysis part. This DNS will help you to write this answer in a more productive and a better manner. Now we will start with our first topic. This topic has appeared on page number 5 in today's The Hindu edition. This topic is in relation to the coastal vulnerability assessment and disaster management. But this topic is more important because with the help of this topic in today's session, we will learn how to think about it. Now as we proceed in this session, you will come to know that what is the importance of thinking, and you will understand that what are the various multiple dimensions which you can yourself think about certain particular topic. So first of all, let us go with the basic information of this topic. The context of this topic is that recently the Earth System Science Organization, that is ESSO, INCOIS, and the Integrated Coastal and Marine Area Management, that is ICMAM, have carried out the mapping and demarcating of the multi-hazard coastal vulnerability for the states. Now the context of this topic talks about the multi-hazard coastal vulnerability, which means that the coast of India is not prone to only one or two types of hazards or natural disasters, but it faces multiple hazards. Now what are those hazards we'll learn in this session. But next, first we will try to link this particular topic from the UPSC scheme of syllabus points of view. This topic falls under the General Studies paper 3 in the section of the disaster management and the micro section which again repeats itself, the disaster and the disaster management. And the theme of this topic has been repeatedly asked in previous years also. For example, I have taken just one simple question as a reference from the UPSC 2019 mains. The question asked that disaster preparedness is the first step in any disaster management process. Explain how hazard zonation mapping will help in disaster mitigation in the case of landslides. Now the question was asked with the reference of landslides. There will not be surprise if the question comes in the context of the coastal ecosystem or the Himalayan ecosystem or the Gangetic ecosystem. So that is why in this session, the discussion which we are going to proceed with, if you closely understand that discussion, you will come to know that you will be able to answer each and every question regardless of which specific ecosystem has it been asked. So before moving toward the Coastal Vulnerability Index CVI, which this topic or this news item talks about, we will first understand that what are the various multiple hazards which Indian coast face. Now this is a rough diagram of India and it shows the vulnerability profile of the India's coast. Now whenever you have to think about the multiple disasters, about the vulnerability which are associated with the Indian coast, Let us try to understand that in what lines you should think that multiple disasters straight away come to your mind, right? So here we will talk about the syllabus approach. Whenever you have to think about the multiple dimensions, just go by the syllabus approach which UPSC gives you. That is the best guide, the preamble of the UPSC preparation. We'll apply this syllabus approach in today's session in analyzing the vulnerability profile of India's coast. And this session is going to be very interesting because it will not help you understand this particular session only, but trust me, you will gain a lot from this session. Now, let us apply this syllabus approach in understanding the vulnerability profile. The first part of the geography is the geomorphology, and the geomorphology is further divided into two parts, that is endogenic and the exogenic. Clear? So, if you come to the endogenic force, the first part we talk about is the plates. And if you have the basic understanding of the plates, the tectonic plate movements, you know that majorly there are three types of plate boundaries. One is the converging, second is the diverging, and third is the slide past boundaries, also known as transcurrent boundaries. Now, just look at the regions which are spread in the neighborhood of India. Now, if you know the basic plates, this is the Indian plate or broadly known as the Indo-Australian plate. Here we have Arabian plate, here we have African plate, here the minor plate is of Somali plate. In this part we have Southeast Asian plates like Sunda plate, Burma plate, Sumatra plate, etc. Clear? Now in the West Indian Ocean region, we are facing a rifting, that is the divergent boundaries. And if we know that there is a place that where divergent boundaries exist, that means there is a rifting going apart. And if there is rifting, we might have certain volcanic activities, right? Due to this volcano, there will be a rise of temperature of the water of the West Indian Ocean and it will alter the chemical composition of the oceans. Now, alteration of the chemical composition, you can understand, will have a direct bearing on the waters of the West Indian Ocean, which in turn will affect the West Indian coast. Clear? Similarly, if you come to this area, here we have a convergent boundaries. Here the Indian plate is converging with the Sunda, Burma, Sumatra plate. So now if we have a convergence, we understand that there we can have a major earthquake, right? So that means if the earthquake is happening in this area, the shock which will be released, the energy which will be released by that earthquake can in turn cause tsunamis. That was exactly the reason behind the tsunami which Indian eastern coast faced few years back. Clear? Because what happens is that in these areas we have active convergence going on. And because of that convergence, the blocks of the abyssal plain are displaced vertically up to such an extent that this vertical displacement of the rocks cause tsunamis. Now, the endogenic geomorphology part is over from the syllabus point of view, and you know that these are the four broad hazards which are west as well as the east coast face. Now, you come to the exogenic geomorphology part where we have topics like weathering, erosion, and mass movement. So, just think that if we are talking about the coastal areas of India, will it not be the case that the marine waves of the Indian Ocean will directly create a huge hydraulic impact on these particular coasts? And if it is true, then the phenomena like erosion, landslides, slumping, etc. will take place. So, again, these three phenomena have come to our mind. That is from the exogenic geomorphology part. Now, why just geomorphology? Let us move to the second part of geography, which is known as the climatology. Now, what are the broader topics which you study in climatology? You study about cyclones. You know that the Bay of Bengal region are more prone to cyclonic activities as compared to the Arabian Sea. In the Bay of Bengal region, we also have the offshoots of the tropical cyclones which originate in the Pacific Ocean. Moreover, if you are aware about the recent current affairs, it has also been witnessed that even the Arabian Sea region is witnessing the rise in intensity and frequency of the cyclones, which is majorly impacting the coast of Gujarat as well as the coast of Kerala. So again, are both the coasts are vulnerable to cyclones also. The second important thing which you study in climate is the monsoon. Now just look at the beauty of the syllabus, that if you understand the syllabus holistically, think about all the dimensions which you will get. And that is not true only regarding the geography or disaster syllabus. This strategy proves its relevance across all the papers and across all the syllabus and subjects. So the second important thing in climatology is monsoon. Now you all are aware about the erratic nature of the Indian monsoon, and because of the rising greenhouse gas emissions and the global warming, the erraticity of the monsoon is further rising. The intensity of the monsoon rains is increasing and the time span of the falling of that rain is reducing, which is why we are having various phenomena like flash floods. Now, again, if we are having such intense rainfall on these coasts, will we not experience erosion, landslides, slumping, etc. activities? So, again, the rising intensity and frequency of the cyclones and the erratic nature of monsoons further create such hazards in addition to the obvious hazard, which is the floods. Now, again, why are we restricting ourselves to the physical geography part in assessing the vulnerability profile? Now, come to the human geography part. Okay, think about all the anthropogenic activities which are going on in these areas. Why we have faced intense urban floods in the city of Chennai, why there is an encroachment of the wetlands and floodplains in these areas, for example, the Ennore Creek, why there is a large scale illegal mining going on in Western Ghats. Are we not increasing the superincumbent load pressure on the geology of these regions by creating huge and multi-purpose hydroelectric projects? Are we not threatening the ecosystem of these areas with the help of the construction of roads, rails, airways, waterways, etc.? So, the point is that all the human activities which are taking place in this ecologically sensitive area, that is the coastal region of India, is increasing the vulnerability of these coasts. Why is it so that we call the Ganga Brahmaputra deltas as one of the most threatened ecosystems of the world? The mangroves in these particular regions are not protected and conserved in the manner which they should be. So, again, here I want to make two important points. One is that whenever you have to think about the vulnerability profile of any region, here we have talked about the coastal ecosystem. Now, just think about the Gangetic plains, the vulnerability of the Himalayan ecosystems, or the vulnerability of the desert ecosystem, that is the Kutch and the Thar areas. So the point is that always think about the multiple hazards and disasters which that region is prone to, because only then you will be able to give the steps which can be taken to manage those disasters. And the second point which I want to make is that in order to understand multiple disasters associated with that region, always go with the syllabus approach, which all of you know. And trust me, after this session, try to think about all the disasters which are associated, let's say, in Himalayan ecosystems. Apply this syllabus approach in the Himalayan ecosystem yourself, and you yourself will come across multiple disasters. That is the way that how you should think before writing the answer in your mains. Clear? I hope I have made my point clear. That is why I have taken a bit longer discussion on this particular aspect. Now we'll move forward in this topic. Now, if we know that there are multiple disasters which are associated with India's coast, let us think that what is the significance of India's coast. Now, again, these are very basic points, but you should be aware about these dimensions also. First, that India's coasts are very narrow, and in those small areas, the population which we have is very high. That is why the Indian coast have huge demographic load and population density. Second, that region is highly relevant for the population of that area from the agricultural point of view, because the coastal population is mainly dependent on the crops like paddy and on the activities like fisheries. So that is why the agriculture in that region becomes a dominant occupation. The third thing is India has all its major ports on its coast. So that is why the coastal areas become highly relevant as far as the sea trade is concerned. And in this very line, we know the significance that what the ports mean for us when it comes to the trade of oil. Next, coming to the another dimension, the cultural history of these areas is very rich. The tribal population which exists in these coastal areas have their own localized culture, so it is also our responsibility to preserve and conserve their culture too. Further, these areas are resource rich. For example, the coasts of the Kerala have monazite sands which can be very helpful in the nuclear projects. And the last dimension associated is a security purpose. We all are aware about the Mumbai attacks which took because of the breach in security in our west coast. So these are the multiple dimensions which prove that Indian coasts are of huge significance not just from the regional point of view but also from the national point of view. But as we know that if any region is prone to disaster to such an extent, it will be one of the biggest hindrance in analyzing the potential of this particular region. So now let us come to the core topic, that is the Coastal Vulnerability Index. And in the end of this session, again I will give you a very important point that you can apply to other answers as well. So before that, first we will understand the Coastal Vulnerability Index. This index has been created by the bodies which were mentioned in the context, but the important thing is that this vulnerability is majorly in regard to the rising sea levels of the India's coast. We know that because of the rise in the global temperatures and consequent the melting of the glaciers of the Antarctic sheets, there has been a rise in the sea level. So that is why that has become one of the major concerns, increasing the vulnerability of India's coast. That is why this index primarily focuses on the sea level and the associated parameters. So this index takes 7 parameters into account, and those parameters are shown in front of you on the screen. The first is the shoreline change rate, second is the sea level change rate, third the coastal slope, fourth the wave height, fifth the tidal range, sixth the regional elevation, and seventh the coastal geomorphology. Now, all these points are self explanatory in nature. For example, what do you mean by the coastal geomorphology and how will it impact the vulnerability of the coast? It is very simple. The geomorphology talks about the rocks. For example, if the rocks in the particular area is of soft nature, those soft rocks will be highly vulnerable to erosion and weathering. That is why the consequent geomorphological instability will be created. Similarly, if we talk about the tidal range, if we have a huge tidal range in particular area, that means the potential of the inundation and flooding of that particular area is very high. Similarly, if we have a huge wave height, it will mean the hydraulic impact which will be created on the Indian coast will be high, which in turn will again destabilize the coast. So the point is that these are the 7 parameters which are taken into account while calculating the coastal vulnerability index. Once this index is created, all the coastal states of India is divided into 4 groups. That is, the, the first group is the states which are very highly vulnerable to disasters. The second group is states highly vulnerable. The third is medium rate vulnerability, and the fourth is low vulnerability. So again, I am repeating that there are 7 parameters in the coastal vulnerability index, and on the basis of these parameters, the regions are divided into 4 groups, that is very high, high, medium and low. Now in continuation with this, you can take an idea from this division of the government that you can divide your map in answering other answers in 3 or 4 broader categories. For example, let us say that in particular question you have to draw a map on the literacy rate of various states or regions. But it is not possible to remember the literacy rate of each state or region. So what you can do is that you can draw an Indian map and you can divide this Indian map into 4 broad regions. Obviously, you will be aware that yes, this southern region is having a very high literacy rate. On the contrary, this region will be having a low literacy rate. So that is how the concrete data is not very much required, but you should be having a fair idea of the broader zonations, right? Suppose you have to draw a map of population density of India. You divide the India into 4 broad categories: areas having very high population density, high population, medium population density, and low population density. Similarly, you can also have this idea from the rainfall distribution map of India, which you study in your NCRTs. There also, again, there are four or five broader regional division. The areas which experience very high rainfall, areas which experience high rainfall, medium rainfall, low rainfall, and the fifth category comes as very low or the scanty rainfall. So the point is that whenever you study some topic, whether it is in books or in newspaper, you just channelize your mind and think that how reading this topic will not only help you in understanding this particular topic, but also help you in answering the other topics. Clear? So that was the basic reason that why I took such a long discussion on this small topic. Now we will revise this topic in brief once again. Now, as we have discussed that this topic has appeared on page number 5 in relation to the Coastal Vulnerability Index, and this topic falls under the General Studies paper 3 in disaster management part. In this section, we discussed the way to think about the multiple disasters and the vulnerability of the Indian coast, and for that matter, any ecosystem which India has. Next, we came across the significance of the India's coast. And here we discuss that how the syllabus approach can help us in understanding and thinking multiple dimensions associated. Then we came across the significance of the India's coast in terms of population density, agriculture, sea trade, cultural history, resource base, and security. And in the end, we talked about the Coastal Vulnerability Index, which is based on seven parameters, that is, the shoreline change rate, sea level change rate, coastal slope, wave height, tidal range, regional elevation, and coastal geomorphology. And in the end, we discussed that on the basis of these parameters, there will be four broad groupings in which the coastal states will be divided. So now we will move on to our next topic. This topic has appeared in today's The Hindu at page number 1, and this topic is from the science and tech section. This topic is in the relation of nuclear fusion energy. And the context of this topic is that recently the scientists in the United Kingdom said that they have achieved a new milestone in producing the nuclear fusion based energy, which generated around 59 megajoules of sustained energy during an experiment. And this 59 megajoules is more than double which was previously achieved in 1997. The important point is that the progress in the nuclear fusion energy is taking place across the globe, which is going to be one of the biggest milestones for the scientific community and common people also, because it will help the people in access to clean energy. So the broader contours under which we are going to discuss today's session lies in the General Studies paper 3 in the section of technology. We will discuss in this section that what do you exactly mean by the nuclear fusion energy, how is it different from the fission energy, and what are the important components of the fusion based energy. Further, we will also discuss that whether any experiment is going on in India or not. So let us carry forward our discussion in this line. So basically, ITR is a fusion research mega project which is supported by seven members, and India is one of these seven members. This ITR is a fusion based research mega project which is situated in the country of France. The other six countries beside India are China, European Union, Japan, South Korea, Russia, and US. The main aim of the ITER project is to demonstrate the scientific and technological feasibility of the fusion energy. Now, first we will understand that what exactly is fusion and fission. As the simple meanings in English language is concerned, the fission is a simple breakdown and fusion is the combining of certain things, that is, the mixing of certain things. So obviously the fission energy is the one in which the breakdown of the atoms is concerned. If the one atom or the nucleus is breakdown, the energy released is known as the energy based on fission. And on the contrary, the energy released when two or more atoms combine is known as the fusion energy. Let us understand this with the help of this demonstration. So what happens is that there are two elements, that is deuterium and tritium. Deuterium and tritium are the isotopes of hydrogen, and these elements are combined or fused together to generate the energy. But the important point is that these deuterium and tritium can be fused together in the presence of huge heat and temperature. That is why it is said that deuterium and tritium are heated at 150 million degrees Celsius to speed up the atoms. Now we'll discuss that why is it so. First of all, we know that the basic source of energy in the sun is the fusion reaction. Now what happens is that see deuterium and tritium both have the positive charges. So if two things have a similar charges, the electrostatic repulsion exists between these two things. That means because of the similar charges, deuterium and tritium will repel each other and they will not fuse with each other. In order to overcome this repulsive force, a huge temperature is required. Further, due to the high mass of sun, the gravitational pull of sun is of tremendous amount. And this gravitational pull along with the high temperature which is there existing already in the sun, the combined force which is generated out of these two factors overcome the electric repulsion between the similarly charged particles. And that is how these particles come together and fuse. So, because this high temperature and the gravitational pull provide high speeds to these atoms, at such high speeds, these atoms collide and fuse with each other. And the moment when deuterium and tritium fuse with each other, they produce two things. One is the helium and other is the neutron. And these things contain a substantial amount of energy. That is when after the fusion, the energy is released in the form of helium and neutron. And this is the very energy which we want to capture and want to use to create electricity. But now there is one challenge. The challenge is, as we have discussed, that the sun has huge mass and volume of its own, which generates a very high gravitational pull. But on the earth, if we want to fuse these two things, we cannot generate such a huge mass in order to gain the advantage of higher gravitational pull, which in turn, as we have discussed, will help these two things to overcome the repulsion. That means on earth, if we have to replicate this model, it will have to be in a confined place. Now, this confined space will be very almost negligible in size as compared to sun. That means that the gravitational pull of this space due to its mass will be almost equal to zero. Now, in the sun, we have discussed that there were two factors which were allowing the similarly charged atoms to overcome the repulsion. One was the gravity, and the other was the temperature. So, if we take it on the earth, we know that the gravity of this particular space will be almost zero. It means to overcome the repulsion between these two particles, the temperature which we need to produce over here will be higher than the temperature in the sun. Now that is the biggest challenge, that why still we are not able to completely tap the potential of the fusion energy. Moreover, once the fusion has taken place and the tremendous amount of energy is released in the form of helium and neutron, this confined space must be able to control that radiations within its boundaries. We cannot afford to leak those radiations. So, in this sense, try to understand the challenge which exists in the fusion energy. So, this confined space is called plasma, and there is one important term in this context which is known as the tokamak. Now, tokamak is the device which uses a powerful magnetic field to confine the plasma in the shape of torus. And this is designed in order to control the thermonuclear fusion power. As of 2021, it is the leading candidate for the practical fusion reactor because there is no other alternative available with us. So tokamak, always remember this term for your examination, that tokamak is a device which is aimed in controlling the thermonuclear fusion power and has a powerful magnetic field to confine the plasma in the desired shape. Now we'll discuss certain advantages which are associated with the fusion energy. The first one is the reliability component, because we know that the fusion energy is independent from the weather condition as compared to, let's say, solar energy or the wind energy. Wind energy will produce electricity only when we have a desired speed of the wind. Similarly, solar energy will produce electricity or generate electricity only in the absence of clouds. But fusion energy is independent of the weather parameters. The second is in relation to the environment protection and conservation. The fusion produces zero greenhouse gas emissions, emitting only the helium as exhaust. On the other hand, the fuels on which we are majorly dependent as like coal or petroleum or natural gas. All the three things produce a tremendous amount of greenhouse gases. The third advantage is the energy autonomy. The fusion energy can be placed anywhere in the world and its fuel is readily available. It will offer energy independence to all the countries regardless of the geography. The fourth is the land use. We know that to establish a mega solar power project, a lot of solar panels are installed, occupying hundreds of acres of land. But the fusion energy plants reduce the need for the long transmission lines because they can be built near the sources of energy demand, making better use of land. Further, the amount of land which is required to build a plant is far lesser. The next advantage is in relation to the timeline. With the urgency of the climate change in mind, we are on the course to power home, businesses, industries with fusion energy by 2030s. Now that is why in such a short run, this nuclear fusion energy is a very promising candidate. Further, its green nature, as we have already discussed in relation to its greenhouse gas emissions. The fusion energy produces zero carbon emission. Just 1 kilogram of fusion fuel can power 10,000 homes for 1 year and replace 55,000 barrels of oil, 6 million kgs of natural gas, or 10 million kgs of coal. Now, this shows the green nature of the fusion energy. So that is why in today's session we have discussed that what is the scientific basis of the nuclear fusion and why is it so difficult to capture the energy generated out of the fusion on Earth. Then we discussed that what is a tokamak. It is a device which confines the plasma to control the thermonuclear fusion power. Now the question rises that is there any such device which is present in India? So yes, we have a device known as Aditya, which is a small or medium category of tokamak in our country. In the last, we discussed the various advantages of the fusion energy in terms of its reliability, environment, energy autonomy, land use, timeline, and its green nature. Now, moving to our next topic, which has appeared as a lead article in today's The Hindu Daily edition on page number 6. This topic gives us a brief overview of the much talked Kerala model of development. Many a times in many newspapers as well as the news debates and discussions, this Kerala model of development appears again and again. So, in this very regard, we need to look at this as a case study so that we can learn from the success as well as the shortcomings or failures of this model in order to have a balanced regional development across India. So, first, under this session, we will learn the positives of the Kerala model of development and then we'll analyze that what were the factors responsible behind the rise, the socio-economic rise of Kerala. Thereby, in the end, we will also discuss the issues related to this and the further strategy which Kerala as a state, or for that matter, any state, should take into consideration while planning its development. So, first, we will understand that what basically is the Kerala model of development. What do we exactly mean by this? Is it related to the GDP growth? Is it related to the employment? Is it related to the health, education, etc.? So, what exactly is it? So, the Kerala model of development is basically the social model of development whereby the economic parameters are given lesser importance as compared to the social parameters. That is why when we analyze the national census or the regional data across different states, we come across this conclusion that the Kerala has higher life expectancy compared to other states. It has one of the lowest IMR as well as the MMR, which stands for the infant mortality rate and maternal mortality rate. It has the lowest IMR and MMR across India. It has the highest literacy level. Plus, It is supported by the robust healthcare infrastructures and very low birth rate. And this was one of the biggest reasons behind the population control in Kerala. So all these parameters clearly conclude that the Kerala model of development is more focused towards the social sphere. So if I have to link all these dimensions with the core conceptual topic, this debate goes around the growth versus development. Now you should understand the difference between what is growth and what is development. The parameters which are associated with the economic growth are GDP, let's say per capita income. Now, if I ask you a question that if one state is having a higher per capita income, let us suppose we have two states A and B. And if I say that the state A has higher per capita income, can I conclude that state A will be having better equality status of different sections compared to B? No, not exactly. It may be, it may not be. Here is where the development plays its role. Development is mainly social in nature but not restricted in its. Growth is mainly economic in nature and development is socio-economic in nature. So that is why the development takes into account not only the GDP or the per capita income or the employment status of people in that area, but also the parameters of education, health, social capital, etc. So the Kerala model of development is primarily focused on this very aspect regardless of the economic growth. Now we'll discuss that what were the various factors responsible that why the state of Kerala has outpaced the other states in terms of development, that is the social parameters. The first factor responsible for this was the historical angle. The Kerala was one of the important places for missionaries, and after coming of missionaries, they spread a lot of education, which at that point of time were mostly modern in nature. So that was one of the biggest reasons behind the opening of the minds of the people, providing them with the scientific knowledge. The second was the princes, the role of princes in the state of Kerala. It has been witnessed that since ages, various princes, kings, and queens in the state of Kerala were particularly interested in investing in things like education or health. So, this investment laid the foundation of the modern day Kerala which we observe today. And the third historical factor is the social reforms. We are all aware about the Bhakti movement in South India. So these social reforms were basically focusing towards removing all the social evils. For example, untouchability, caste-based discrimination, gender-based discrimination, etc. So you can understand that if in a particular region such type of movements are taking place, that is going to have a long-term impact on the minds of the people, and the people there will be more focused towards attaining the values like equality, fraternity, equity, liberty, brotherhood, freedom, etc. So these were the historical factors which have laid strong foundations behind the social progress of the people of the state of Kerala. Now comes the second factor. The post-independent India saw the land reform movement, but we all know that land reform movement was not very successful across India. The regional experiences of the land reforms vary up to a huge extent. There were states whereby the land reforms were total failure, and there were other states where land reforms took place in a good way. The state of Kerala was one of those states where the land reforms have provided some better results because the redistribution of land and the abolition of zamindari, because of the strong presence of leftist ideology in the state of Kerala, took place. Further, the ownership rights to the tenants were also offered. So now this redistribution of land and providing of the ownership rights to the tenants and the landless laborers provided again the foundation of equity. It reduced the socio-economic disparity among the masses of the state of Kerala. The third factor was the education. Even today, 16% of the budget of the state of Kerala is allocated towards education. Similarly, a huge expenditure is also made in the health sector. It is witnessed that in Kerala, private, government, as well as the cooperative institutions are working in tandem with each other to provide the health services to the people. Further, because of the high literacy level of the women, the children born out of her are better nourished. Now, this is not true just in the state of Kerala, but the global experience shows us. For example, read about this Bolsa Familia program of Brazil. Go through this after this session. You'll come to know what I was trying to say. Now, this is one of the very important case studies which you can take reference of in your various answers as well as essay. So, coming back, the better educational level of the women helped in producing better, nourished, and healthy children. Further, all the systems of medicine, that is the Ayurveda, Unani, allopathy, naturopathy, etc., all systems work in tandem in Kerala, and an integrated system of health infrastructure is established in Kerala. The last but not the least factor is the strong presence of self help groups and the cooperative network in Kerala. For example, Kudam Shri model. Now, this is a very famous model, you must all be aware about it. So, these are the factors responsible for the rise in the social development of the state of Kerala. However, as it is said that there is the other side of the coin also. So, there are some issues involved in these. The issues are that, as we have discussed, that because of the reduction of the total fertility rate as well as the population control measures in Kerala, the workforce ratio has deteriorated. Previous economic survey also pointed out regarding the change pattern of the migration of the laborers from UP and Bihar towards the southern states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Now, because the population is controlled, we have lesser presence of the youth population in Kerala, and that is the reason that its workforce is decreased. Further, this reduction of workforce is further aggravated when we see that there is a high out migration rate of youth from the state of Kerala. Several data and studies show us that the youth from Kerala is out migrating towards either the Western developed countries like Europe or USA or the countries of West Asia, for example, Saudi Arabia. Combined with the absence of adequate workforce, the major source of revenue for the government is the remittance. But this over dependence on remittance is not good for the self sustainable and the self sufficient economy. And that is why several experts claim that the remittance dependent economy is not sustainable in the long run. Further, as we have said that the Kerala has invested a lot of money in the social expenditure, which has a poor return on investment in short run, the public debt on the government has exceeded its limit. The state of Kerala has one of the highest public debt as compared to other states. Last but not the least major issue which the Kerala faces as of now is the destruction of its ecosystem because of the increase in anthropogenic activities like greenhouse gas emissions, vehicular emissions, deforestation, encroachment, land use changes. All these activities have transformed and destructed the natural ecosystems. We all know from the basic geography knowledge that Kerala has vast variety of ecosystems ranging from the coastal ecosystem, western ghats, forest, wetlands, etc. But today the reality is that all the ecosystems are under a severe threat because of these activities. That is why, in order to address these issues, we must know that what future strategy should Kerala, or for that matter any state which is aiming to plan its development, should take. First is, as far as the state of Kerala is concerned, the recommendations given by the Madhav Gadgil committee in the context of conserving and preserving the Western Ghats is of huge importance. The second is, experts say that Kerala must give adequate attention to its tertiary education infrastructure, more specifically on the subjects like marine biology and digital technology. That is because the Kerala already enjoys the required expertise in these sectors, and we must tap the potential of the existing expertise. The third is that Kerala must also give adequate attention to boost its industrial setup. For example, the food processing industries, petrochemical industries, and the shipbuilding industries. This will increase the manufacturing bases in Kerala as well as also provide the required employment to the youth of that state. So, the major learning from this discussion, which we can take in our mind, is that any state must not focus excessively on any one sector, that is social or economic. The need of the hour is to invest equally in the social as well as economic sector because it is the balance of the socio-economic parameters which can provide us the sustainable development. So the next topic is our reference article. This topic has appeared in today's newspaper in page number 11, and this topic talks about the recent Quad. This topic is from the context of the international relations, and this Quad institution is very important as far as the India's Indo-Pacific international policy is concerned. Now Quad is the grouping. Now Quad is the grouping of the four countries in which India is a significant member, and all the dimensions of this Quad grouping was holistically covered in the previous DNS dated 13th March 2021 as well as 15th March 2021. Now you are requested to go back to the previous DNS dated 13th and 15th March respectively in order to completely and holistically understand all the possible dimensions related to the Quad grouping. Now, this topic was appeared on page number 10 in today's The Hindu edition, and this topic talks about the mRNA vaccine likely by April in India. Now, this topic is mostly relevant from the science and tech section, especially from the biotechnologies point of view. However, this topic was holistically covered by Baswa sir in the DNS dated 11th November 2020. So you are requested to go back to this DNS in order to understand all the intricacies which are associated with mRNA vaccine relevant from the UPSC examinations point of view. So now is the time for the question of the day. The question asked in yesterday's DNS dated 9th February 2022 was in relation to the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. There were four statements given and you had to find the correct statements out of these four statements. The question asked that which of the following are included in the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court lies under Article 131 of the Indian Constitution. The statement 1 said, a dispute between the Government of India and one or more states, yes, correct. Second, a dispute regarding the elections to either House of the Parliament or State Legislature, incorrect. A dispute between the Government of the India and a Union Territory, incorrect because 131 does not mention it. A dispute between two or more states, correct. So the option 1 and 4 are correct. That is why the option C is the correct answer. The question of the day for today's DNS is in relation to the nuclear fusion reaction. Consider this question and you have to find the correct statements out of given these three statements.